you stream? Hold on.
All right. Well, I've started now.
MOYA
Whoa, thank you. Hey, Nota. Welcome to MOYA live streams, guys. As promised, we're gonna hang out with Nota and unpack what's going on. The society we live in is quite lawless, and there isn't really, it's just a law unto itself. So it's going to be up to people on the ground to start laying down law, and because it seems as if the right and wrong, like people have lost their concept of right and wrong. And I think that it's a result of money and the power of money in our society. So let's unpack what's happening. Nota, what are your thoughts? I mean, I haven't watched Gayton's live stream, but the bits I'm seeing, they're triggering for me. So I don't even want to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel really sorry for Gayton. You know what I mean? I feel really sorry for Gayton. And what I see is what most colored people go through. I was having a discussion with, I don't know who I was having it with, about, certain podcasters and certain people in media. And I was discussing Sizwe, Sizwe Mpofu Welsh, you know what I mean? And for me, in that discussion, I was just saying, I find it a little bit problematic that Sizwe Mpofu Welsh identifies as Black, and in that discussion, we were discussing what it means to be Black. And the person I was debating with said, being Black is not synonymous with suffering. Being Black is not synonymous with oppression, etc., etc. I'm richer than white people, or, there are white people that are poorer than me, whatever the case may be, that he was explaining. And I found that, very naive, because the mere fact that we are called Black is because we are oppressed peoples. The mere fact that we are called Black, or we are called whatever other people decide to call us, right? That's another thing that people don't factor in, is that we're referred to by what others observe us as, not what we say we are. So we can't even claim our own identity as Black people. And therefore, as a Black person, you are what has been identified as Black. And unless you can be clearly identified as Black, you cannot now identify yourself as Black. A white person can't say, yes, I'm white and I'm poor and I'm living in the streets, therefore I now want to identify as Black. I mean, even if you are, quote unquote, a para, a hobo, whatever they may use, to term people that live on the streets, vagrants and stuff like that, right? A white para will never be Black just because they're a para. You know what I mean? Just hold on for a second. Okay. Sorry, man. I'm being asked to move by security. So a white para will never be Black. Luckily, this a man working security is one of the polite ones. He wasn't rude and streaming.
I was about to say, I'm so glad you did not go into your swearing spells like you traumatized last time.
I never punched down. You know what I mean?
Oh, have you matured? Have you matured?
No, I've never, ever. I only punch up. You know what I mean? As I was saying, so that's identifying as Black by mere virtue that, you've got Black ancestry or anything else, for me is problematic, because it's an erasure of what it is to actually be Black. You understand? No one will ever look at Sizwe Mpofu Welsh and say, you're Black. So no one will ever identify him as Black. He chooses to identify as Black. When people look at him, they'll probably think you're mixed race, you're colored, or you might be white, just, a little caramel colored or something. You know what I mean? A little tinted white person. So you will never be looked at with the same contempt, right? And I use that word deliberately, because Black people are looked at with contempt, a certain level of contempt. You'll never be looked at with the same level of contempt that a Black person is looked at. So you will never be identified as Black. So therefore, the solidarity that you're offering us by saying, hey, I identify as black, is meaningless, because you don't suffer what we suffer from. And that's the problem. It's like, uh, um, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get further because I don't want it to seem like I'm attacking him and his identity as black. But now you've got someone who identifies as colored, right? Identifies as colored, claims to have a colored parent or a mixed race parents, which is Japanese and Irish mixed. And I don't know how that Japanese and Irish mix ends up with a typical colored phenotype. I don't know how. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, just look at, I use Caesar Mpofu Walsh as an example. You can see that he's a mix between black and white. Now, if you remove his black father and replace him with a Japanese man, Caesar Mpofu Walsh looks completely different, looks nothing like what a colored person in South Africa typically looks like. You understand what I'm saying? So I call that whole claim into question about his ancestry. But he identifies as a colored person. And knowing what it is to be a colored person, right? He knows what it is to be. I've seen some of his speeches. He's spoken about the colored experience, the colored anti-apartheid struggle, etc., etc. He also knows the experience of black people in colored communities. He knows both. He claims his mother is Mosotho, right? So as a Mosotho woman, as a young Mosotho boy growing up, he would have felt, or even if he was a dark-skinned colored, he would have felt the anti-black sentiment, that is endemic in colored communities. So he would know that. He knows that that's a soft spot. You understand what I'm saying? So the way in which I saw the whole entire display, his defense of it, is someone who's in an identity crisis and is too old for that. At a certain point in time, you need to be educated, you need to learn. You can be like that in your 20s, not in your 30s, not in your 40s, and most certainly not in your 50s. He was born in 1974, right? I see. So he'd be 51 now, right? So he's way too old for the identity crisis that he's going through. And that's why it's impossible for him to admit he's wrong, because he is dealing with his own identity. That is actually the conflict that is in question. So on another podcast, I also spoke about the reason why I don't date outside of my race. You know what I mean? I wouldn't date outside my race. And I'm going to explain this in two parts, because there's a problematic part about it. And there's, the part that I think is just about, loyalty to my blackness, right? Or my Africanness. The first part is that I don't ever want to have kids that don't know their identity, or that are confused about their identity, or that are told about their identity by other people and cannot reconcile that with what they know to be true of their own, or what they are raised with. I do not ever want my children to have that conflict. Caesar Mpofu Walsh has got that conflict right now. You understand? When he wants to be Walsh, he can be Walsh. When he wants to be Mpofu Walsh, he's Mpofu Walsh. The mere fact that he's got two surnames shows you that he's got an identity crisis. So I don't want that for my kids. That's why I don't even find women of other races, an attraction, because, for me, it's about copulation, building a family. That's why we build a relationship. And therefore, it's pointless just having a frivolous relationship with someone that I don't see myself getting to know well enough to trust with having children with me, right? That's the one thing. The second thing is my own anti-black sentiments from home. I'm a light-skinned Tsonga speaker, right? It's not typical for Tsonga-speaking people to be light-skinned. So back from when I was a child, I was called Shilungudana, which means our little white boy, right? And I hated that because my younger brother, 2 years younger than me, is dark, So when they would say all these things about me within my own family, I'd cut it out immediately, especially because, a lot of my cousins are also dark-skinned, right? I'd tell them, cut it out immediately. We don't do that, because what are you trying to say inadvertently, that my little brother is less handsome than me because he's darker skinned? You know what I mean? So that is an internal thing. The second part of that is that my little brother and myself, right, and he's only 2 years younger than me, he's 33 years old right now. My little brother and myself know something to be true, unequivocally true. We cannot bring dark-skinned girls home. Our mother would never allow it, as a dark-skinned Xhosa woman. That is not saying anything bad about my mother, but it's admitting that I inherit some of that anti-black sentiment from her because of her. Because I know that as I might find the most beautiful, I could bring home Lupita Nyong'o, beautiful, accomplished, whatever. Or maybe Lupita Nyong'o's younger sister. Lupita Nyong'o is too old for me. She's much older than me. When I say too old for me, she's much older than me. I know that would be problematic. You understand what I'm saying? And I know that is also my mother, who grew up with light-skinned siblings, and she was the darker one. And the anti-black sentiment emanates from her within our family. The darkest skinned one, the one who should be teaching her children, yo, be proud of your darkness and everything else. Fortunately for us, we learned and we're taught, we're conscientized at a young age, and therefore, we weren't tainted by that, but we know it to be true. You know what I mean? Because anytime we bring home a girl, a yellow bone, hey, we are my yellow bone, eh? That's what they say to my mother's sisters say. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, my yellow bone. You know what I mean? That's something that's an anti-black sentiment. And that is in black families. So now imagine taking that same sentiment and putting it in colored families. And there we bring back the colorism debate. Indians face it as well. You know what I mean? Well, South Asians face it as well. Far East Asians face it as well. Colorism. We've got companies making billions off of skin bleaching and all that type of stuff. So someone who's got all of these things as issues internally cannot be at the helm of institutions of culture, especially in a racially diverse country like our own. Unfortunately, your personal conflicts disqualify you from a position of such influence. Not to say that you're racist or whatever. That is neither here nor there. Whether you're racist or not, that is neither here. That would be even worse, right? That would be even worse. But on the mere fact that you've got an internal conflict, right, which is an identity crisis. We cannot have someone who's an identity crisis telling Zulu kids to protect their culture, telling Xhosa kids to protect their culture, and then next thing, a Zulu kid is going to come across an old tweet where his friends are talking about not wanting their kids to learn Zulu or learn isiZulu. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. You just don't qualify. Now, are we going to say that, no, we shouldn't be having criminals and everything else as ministers and everything else? The whole entire cabinet are criminals. The judiciary are criminals. All of the leaders are criminals. We're in a criminal state. You understand? Like, Gauteng has been known as gangsters' paradise since it became Gauteng. When, in 1997 or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my goodness, they're going to give us the GP name. Oh, now we're really a gangsters' paradise. You know what I mean? That was what was known of the Transvaal. Is that it's the gangsters' paradise. And globally so. Gangster criminal networks from all over the world, are everywhere. So we cannot judge him on whether he's got a criminal past or criminal history, because they're all criminals over there. All of them have got smaller nyana skeletons. And if we start exposing everyone's smaller nyana skeleton, the whole country can just shut down. You understand what I'm saying? So I do feel it would be hypocritical to remove him on account that, he's got a criminal past. Or to even say, you people voted for him. Yes, but who are the you people that you're speaking to? He was deliberately, specifically going for the colored voters. And he took a colored trope, right, and made it an anti-immigrant trope. The Abahambe chant comes from colored communities that don't want Xhosa speakers from the Eastern Cape who they view as refugees in the Western Cape. In 1966, Black residents or migrant workers were stopped from being able to move into the Western Cape, right? That is 1966. That is 59 years ago. So for that whole entire 59 years ago, right, there's been that sentiment. It was even codified in law up until 1991, I think. Yeah, 1991 was when that law fell apart, right? So the Western Cape has always been made or designed for coloreds to dominate in terms of the population and the demographics, right? They did not want Black people there. Helen Ziller also took a jibe at it when she called people from the Eastern Cape refugees. You know, you're closer from home, right? Yes, so me too, right? Especially on my mother's side. So I assume you've also got family in the Western Cape or in Cape Town that
Of
live there.
course, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
My mother's
So
side.
on my mother's side of the family was back there since the 30s, right? It's been in the Western Cape. They ended up living Kwalang. There's also other people that live in Khayelitsha, you know. And Khayelitsha is also, you know, the part that people know about Khayelitsha is, you know, where all the shacks are squashed up together, or you know, the flat parts where all the new RDP houses. There's also like the old section of Khayelitsha, which looks similar to Pimville, Soweto. I don't know if you know where the big houses are at Khayelitsha. You know what I mean? But those people have been there for generations. You know, that's why they've got the big houses. Basalaguma big house. You know, in Khayelitsha. Knowing my cousins that come from that environment, I know for sure anytime we go around or we're moving around, we avoid driving through the colored townships. So even if we go to a place like Philippi, we'd go to the black sides of Philippi, but we avoid driving into the colored townships. If you look at informal settlements in the Western Cape, colored people have their own informal settlements. Aside from black people's informal settlements, there's a place in Paarl called Mbekweni. You know, colored people or white people that live there call it Mbekweni. They don't know what that word means, Mbekweni. Just imagine the oxymoron of a squatter camp be called Mbekweni. You understand what I'm saying? There is no dignity in living in that squalor, but there's an aspiration for a dignified life in future. And that's why they can call their place Mbekweni. There's another place by Hout Bay. I forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's called, but it's also got another name that is, you know, almost opposite of what the area is when you see it. It's another squatter camp, right? That is where the black people or the black squatters stay, right? If you look at the townships around Hout Bay, that's where the colored people stay. So if you just look at the Western Cape as a construct, it's still constructed the same way apartheid racially divided us, with black Africans at the bottom and whites at the top, and coloreds and Indians somewhere in between that, you know, playing interchanging roles depending on how useful they are to the establishment, right? So we know all of this. I don't expect Gayton to not know all of this, right? If he does not know all of this, he can go to Iziko Center, right there around the corner from Parliament. You know what I mean? You can walk through Company Gardens from Plain Street. You just walk down through Company Gardens, and then you're at Iziko Center. It's not far. I'm sure you've walked those areas before. It's a very short walk. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be too much of a bother just to walk through that museum. Even if he walks alone, because the displays are there, they speak for themselves. You don't need a guide. It will take him 1 hour to understand the anti-black sentiment that resides in him. It will take him 1 hour to understand the anti-black sentiments in lots of colored communities. It will take him 1 hour to understand the anti-black sentiment in Indian communities, many communities. White people have the same sentiments, the anti-black hair sentiments. It's like, you know, they like, or they prefer, they think that the superior whites are the ones with the blue eyes and the blonde hair. So we all have some of that sentiment. So you cannot deny that. That's the problem. And at his age, he should be able to understand and admit his biases. Why? Because he's in a ministerial position. He's got delegated executive authority. That is high power. Now, understanding all of that background that we've just spoken about, his reaction to the Open Chats podcast was racist. There's no one that went out on a platform and did not condemn what those boys said. No one. There's no one that said what those boys said is right, it's true, it's factual, check it. No one said that. So there is no reason for colored people to think that black people or African people think that of them in general, or that black people and African people say those sorts of things about colored people, in society. There's no reason to believe that. So if you're condemning the actions of Open Chats podcast, leave it to those boys. Condemn those boys. Don't condemn their blackness. Because what he did is condemn their blackness. He said, what those boys said is wrong because they are black. And there's no way a black can say something like that about a colored person. We are superior. That is what he said. He's an author. He knows how to use words. He knows. That's why he's able to make jokes and say, I was decaffeinated. Yeah, okay, cool. You're a poet. Cool. You're slick with the words. So therefore, if we know that you're slick with words, we know that you're slick enough with words to be racist without looking racist. You don't have to be overtly racist to be racist. So we know that you're intelligent enough. When he said, we are not you, in response to the outrage for his hypocritical attack on Open Chat's podcast, meanwhile, back at the ranch, he's been posting racial expletives for over a decade. You understand? Never mind the things that he said. You know what I mean? That maybe have not been recorded, but we know those are his sentiments. We are not you. He's saying we coloreds are not you blacks. Sure. Sure.
Go to the basement.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being told to move to the basement, but we'll wrap this up shortly. So we colors are not you blacks. That's what he said to us in his statement. In response to all of the outrage, you know what I mean? None of you are going to tell me anything. With arrogance, none of you can remove me. We're not asking you to be removed. We're black people. We don't even vote for the Patriotic Alliance. We would not vote for the Patriotic Alliance because we know that the Patriotic Alliance went out there and said it wants colored voters. It wants to be a voice for colored people. Be a voice for colored people. We don't mind that. But don't be a voice for colored people against blacks. Don't tell colored people, rise up. You're inciting them. Now, what if a colored person had done something to those boys over the weekend? Could we then say Gayton incited a hate crime? He incited racial violence upon those boys? Because his attack was purely racial. Had a white person said that about colored people, there'd be no outrage whatsoever. Because that's Bas speaking. There'd be no outrage whatsoever. And the fact that he can't see the hypocrisy just shows you the extent of his internal conflict. He's admittedly a racist, right? He admits that he thinks that white people are superior. So therefore, it's only obvious that if he has got a superior gene, like his Irish grandmother, so he claims, then he must be superior to other coloreds who might not have Irish genes. You know what I mean? Some of them are mixed with Indian or Indonesian or whatever the case may be, right? He must be superior to them because he's got those Irish genes, those green eyes, right? Those famous green eyes, those ones that they telling us about all over TikTok on our comments. Yeah, well, we have green eyes. Says the most brown-eyed person. You know what I mean? People with green eyes don't even brag about them. So that internal conflict is what needs to be dealt with, and he needs to deal with that outside of the ministry. He needs to deal with that outside of influence. He needs to deal with that outside of state power. Now, you spoke about your Cuba thing. And yes, your Cuba trip, I understand. My problem was that there was a report that was brought out saying that there was a festival that was supposed to happen in the Eastern Cape, right? And apparently officials at the Department of Arts and Culture said that they will not release funding because the minister insists that Somizi is booked for the event. Now, had they insisted for any other reason than the minister may be having a close friendship with Somizi, I wouldn't mind. But Somizi is a compromised person. So therefore, I do mind. I take exception. I don't like an exception being made for someone who's unexceptional and is a convicted, offender, a sexual offender. You know what I mean? That's worse. You can't unsexually offend someone. You can return stolen goods and stuff like that. But if you kill someone or sexually commit a sexual assault on someone, you can't take that back. They live with that trauma throughout. You understand? And worse still, with I guess malevolent homophobia, etc. around. If you sexually assault a man as a man, not only is it, dehumanizing and emasculating, it's something he might even be ashamed to report. You know that. So I think someone who's committed such a serious violation should not, in any instance, be someone that is relied on to head up such an institution. And I think, for me, that's where the biggest problem is the fact that he heads up an institution that is too important for someone as internally conflicted and compromised as he is to run. Now let's move away from the other abuses of power. The first abuse of power I spoke about is a minister going after a podcast. That's an abuse of power, right? That's one thing. And then inciting racial hatred and racial violence on young men, that's an abuse of power. The second one is the abuse of power now forcing someone onto the lineup of an event that's sponsored by the Department of Arts and Culture. Where's the third abuse of power? The third abuse of power is the fact that you're a minister, you're negotiating with SuperSport to secure broadcasting rights for Springbok games, right, on SABC. And then also, you are purchasing SuperSport Football Club. Like,
Nota, please don't go to the basement. Please go find another parking because we're not finished. Because now we're losing your network. All right, guys. In the meantime, oh Lord, I just hope that we're going to get Nota back. There's a lot of issues coming up. Thank you to the comment section. I don't even know where to start because you guys are talking. But I think it's a very valid point that has been raised about having someone lead a ministry when they are actually the Department of Arts and Culture needs someone who is culturally aligned and loves arts and culture and embodies that. And if somebody is still dealing with an identity crisis, then they're completely mismatched. Let me add Nota to the stage. Yo, we're gonna lose your network. You're in the basement.
nah, I'm on. Yeah, don't worry. I've got. I'm gonna walk out.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Interesting question there. This means that you don't know about the MOYA podcast. Please subscribe to the MOYA podcast on YouTube, where we have these intense and interesting and deep conversations that are going to take us forward as a collective. Remember, if we have leaders that are not leaders in place, it means that we're going to have to create our own leadership structures that are going to give us the kind of society that we want. So very well, they can give each other the positions, the Stellenbosch Mafia and all of them can give each other, and the Black Thugs can all give each other positions. It's cool. But we on the side as umphakathi, as the community have to now start having real conversations amongst each other so that we are of a better caliber than our leaders. Nota's just walking out. Don't worry, don't worry. Guys, there's so many comments. So we're going to have to ask him to stay here for long because this is going to we have to unpack. There's a lot coming through. I don't even know where to start, actually. Nota, are you ready now? Okay, he's putting on his earphones. You see, yeah. My relatives there, the Ngana family, has been there. So let me add Nota back on stage. Are we good, Nota? But you need to find somewhere where the network is stable and it's quiet, please, because then it's going to make this a difficult conversation. Okay, your network is still hanging. So this is obviously a very triggering conversation. Black people and colored people have been needing to have this conversation for so many decades. We kind of just had to go on after 94, we just had to, but it seems that it's coming up again. And the issue of colorism, which comes back to the hatred of ourselves, the hatred of our blackness. And that's why it's important to have someone in the Department of Arts and Culture who actually loves culture, loves identity things, it's important. It's because that's what the leader of that sector is about. Note, I'm adding you back on stage and I'm hoping everything is good now. Okay, that's
much
better.
better now. Yeah, much better.
Yeah, nature's always better. Yeah.
Yes, in the concrete jungle. Yeah,
So they say that your explanation for Sidwe Mpofu Walsh was disrespectful. Sidwe does not shy away that he's identified as black. His material life, forget. Okay, I'm not understanding, but people feel attacked. I even saw other comments that were like, no, oh, here's another one, because I do want us to address that. Sizwe doesn't have an identity crisis, but embraces both his parents. Go to the dictionary and read what an identity crisis is. Ucho, oh, guys, Nani,
so,
you got someone from saying the same thing, then you do the same thing. Maybe you might.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need to explain that further. I think even if they disagree, it's a fact. If you are black and you identify as black, you have a black surname. If you are white and identify as white, you have a white surname. If you've got both black and white surnames, there's an identity crisis. Simple. That's a case closed. There's no other reason for that. I'm a reluctant Xitsonga speaker because I didn't speak my home language at home very much, but I learned it at a very young age. By the time I was 5 years old, I was fluent in my own mother tongue. I didn't need to now retrace my ancestry as an adult in adulthood, right? And those are journeys that other people have to go through. And Sizwe has spoken about that, having to retrace his black identity as an adult. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't fully exposed to it as a child growing up. And so, I did not say that as an insult to him or anything else, but I was just using that as an example of someone that the public is aware of and that they can observe. And therefore, I can then, critically analyze, my take on his own identity crisis. I also admitted that I too have my own identity crisis. I didn't just start at Citizen for Welsh, right? And his identity crisis. I spoke about the identity crisis that I had back home growing up, and there it was more of a case of colorism, but it's got the same roots. You know what I mean? So I think that I explained that sufficiently. And I feel that we all need to look at our own anti-blackness, because anti-blackness is taught to everyone. It's taught to whites, colors, Indians, and black people. You know what I mean? That's why we've got internalized racism. And that's why one could say, you know, what you see being shown by Gayton McKenzie, even though he's a colored person, right, is internalized racism. You know, it's internalized self-hatred. You know, talking about how black people are too stinky to put inside the car. Magneta, you're going to sit in the car together. You know what I mean? Why Anugi Kwapa? Because he was working hard, sweating. You understand? By you know, and then you put him in the back of your baki, so you abuse the person that you're extracting slave labor from, and then you're going to go onto social media and insult that person for smelling of sweat. So yeah, you know what I mean? Like if the person smells because, you know, they soiled themselves or something, that's completely different. That is like, okay, you're not potty trained, whatever. You're not a child. An adult, you shouldn't need diapers. But if they're sweating, and that's the body odor of someone who's been doing hard manual labor, you understand what I'm saying? That sweat of hard manual labor that you extracted should not now be the reason why the person now needs to sit in the back of a car like a dog. That is racism. You understand?
So there's a comment here. There's a comment here that says we're putting too much focus on color. Power is what we need to focus on. Power is what needs redistribution. This is getting ridiculous now.
No, that's the thing, is that always the people that benefit from the fact that we've got a racially divided class of society always say, oh, we're always looking at race and everything else. Unfortunately, race is class in South Africa. We're looking at the South African context. Race is class, and power goes along race lines. You understand? So the white people, they have the most power and they protect their power, right? And then they're able to elevate colored Indians and even black people to positions of power to help them protect that power. And they hope that by elevating these people above their own communities, their native communities, that those people will now be so repulsed by their own communities or where they come from, they'll be decaffeinated, right? Isn't that the word that Gayton coined? That's what it means, to be decaffeinated. It means that now I am no longer being seen as someone who can be referred to as a gaffer, because I've elevated myself beyond what people expect of a typical gaffer. You understand? So I am now a deputy boss. That's basically what he's saying. And when we use these other funny things, it's like, oh no, Zionism is to blame for Israel. No, it's not. Judaism is to blame for what's happening in Israel. Is because for every extreme radical Zionist, right, they are able to find a moderate Jewish person that can normalize their Zionism or that can explain it away. You understand what I'm saying? So if that's Judaism is being used as a shield, no, it's not all Jewish people that support Israel, right? Then that Judaism is what upholds the power of the Zionist structure. And until the Jewish people then say we're no longer going to be used to hold up this Zionist power structure, then they should be blamed or painted with the same brush, right? Because why are we starting to see more and more action in the fight against the genocide in Palestine? It's because more and more Jewish people are standing up and speaking out. You know what I mean? And being brave about that. So that's why, you know, I don't like being too generous with, you know, euphemisms or anything of the sort, you know, because this is a race issue and it needs to be addressed as a race issue. If you want to address other issues, address them, but address them on their own. Do not conflate them with this race issue. What was the other one?
So here's this one I want to attack. Nkosana saying the elite are happy that we are focusing on division and not them. How did a criminal become a minister in the first place? What do you think of that conversation about who gets elected into leadership? I mean, when do we say forgive and forget, oh, well, they learn from their past, or where do we draw the line? Because also to be a criminal takes a sort of criminal kind of mind and manipulation. So if you're going to put that criminal sort of mind into a governance structure and access to so many resources, is it not going to default and just act like the mind that it is? So
Yeah.
that question, I mean, it is, does it matter? Should we have people with criminal records in leadership structures? Does it matter? Or everybody is, it's equality for all, and democracy means everyone has got equal access? What's the...
Yeah, I think equal access is problematic if you don't police what happens when someone is convicted of wrongdoing, right? So we can't have equal access, right, if there's unequal consequences to committing the same crime. If a normal person commits crime, someone, a worker at ABSA, commits fraud, they get 15 years sentence. You know what I mean? No questions asked, lock away the key. A minister is accused of fraud, misrepresentations, lying about their qualifications, whatever the case may be. They don't get the same treatment as that guy who worked at Transnet, who wasn't a top ANC official. And that's why he got 15 years for misrepresenting his qualifications. Now, also, the punishments that we give for certain crimes, for me, just doesn't seem to fit, right? There's no way someone who's a minister or a government official should not get much harsher punishments than a normal civilian. There's no way a police officer can commit a crime and not get a much harsher sentence than a normal civilian. And we need to start having harsher punishments for government officials. I think that will solve the problem, because even if I'm a criminal, I'm an armed robber, right? And I did 10 years in prison and I came out and everything else. Now that I go into government, I know that if I do commit the same crime, I'll be punished even more severely now that I'm a government minister. And therefore, if you do that, then you can also, you know, say that certain crimes are like you can be rehabilitated from committing certain crimes. You know what I mean? But when it comes to violent crimes, armed robberies and stuff like that, for me, I think that that should be part of the category that excludes one from public office. You know what I mean? You threatened violence on people, you threatened to kill people, and therefore, you know what I mean, you've already shown a proclivity to taking people's lives. You armed yourself to be ready to do that, and unlawfully so. You know, you're not taking people's lives in self-defense. You're doing it for whatever your criminal endeavors. And therefore, I don't think that that should be, you know, allowed, or someone who's committed crimes like that should be allowed. But I didn't vote for the Patriotic Alliance, and I can't tell the people that voted for the Patriotic Alliance not to vote for the Patriotic Alliance. I cannot. You know, if they feel that in their community, you know, being a gangster and everything else puts you up as part of high society, you can now be a leader in the community, then that they should suffer the consequences of that. You know what I mean? If you guys are going to lobby for votes and you're going to use class, race, or any other identity, you know what I mean, to lobby your votes and to say, we're sticking to this voter base, then that voter base will be painted with that same brush, as in that voter base decided to elect a convicted criminal and put him in high office, and now, as a result, he's been appointed as a minister. No one else should be to blame for that, right? But we should all acknowledge that there's something really wrong in our society that we allow such things to happen. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that all of us should take the blame, but all of us should be accountable for the fact that we live in a society where such things can happen and will be accepted.
Yeah, so we also have to look at the type of leaders we lead. Because, I mean, what's the point of leading a good life, having integrity and principles, if leadership is not doing that? I mean, the reason South Africa is the most unequal society in the world with such high poverty and high unemployment is because we've chosen leaders that are not leaders. So what kind of South Africa can we imagine if we choose the correct leaders?
Have we ever chosen leaders as South Africans? Have we ever chosen leaders? Have we ever been asked, what do you look for in leaders as South Africans? Let's have a discussion. What type of people do you look for in leadership? Which people do you think qualify? Okay, out of those people that you've now qualified under this following criteria, now choose or elect a leader. Who is the most popular out of all these qualifying leaders? We've never had a process like that. And that's why, when I was watching your previous episode, I was going through emotions, like up and down the whole entire episode, because, there was some problematic things I heard about blacks from Dube, as someone from Deep Loop Zone 2, I also know blacks from Deep Loop Extension. And for those who are not Sowetans, you'll have to understand Soweto politics to understand that even in Soweto, we're not all the same. There was different levels of Sowetans. When Mam Shedo Twala was talking about, her going to the United States and saying that South Africa was not ready for democracy or not ready for the elections, she was completely right. And we're seeing the results of that. We weren't ready for that. Because had we been ready, right, we would have chosen differently. Had we been informed. But we voted with a gun against our head. We voted under the threat of imminent violence. I was still very, very young, but I still remember how those times of violence, I remember the trauma of those days. You know what I mean? I distinctly remember 1993. I distinctly remember that year. I was only 3 years old, but I distinctly remember that year. Because that year, every news, was about violence somewhere. 1993, every news, there was violence in KZN, there was violence in Togoza. You understand, there was violence, and it was all these groups, little armed militias in different communities, perpetrating that violence, and it seemed like the police couldn't get a hold on it. You know what I mean? They couldn't get a hold on it. They were really struggling. So I remember that tension. And after the elections, I also remember that ease as well. Like after 94, the ease of the tensions, I remember that, but that ease came from being naive, because it took a while for things to start materially changing. It took a while for things to start materially changing. We only really started noticing the changes, you could say maybe closer towards 2010. After South Africa won the World Cup bid, we were like, oh yes, okay, now we can really feel that the rest of the world has now integrated us, and now we're part of the world. We're part of participating in things like hosting World Cups, etc., etc. That's when you could say, okay, progress had been made. But from 2011 onwards, after we'd done the World Cup, it seemed the country went on to autopilot. We were building the airplane while flying, and then decided to put it on autopilot without finishing building the airplane. And
wait, Nota.
Yeah.
Sorry to disturb you, and sorry that I've looked distracted. It's because I'm trying to look for tweets, and I wish I'd set them up so that I could put them on screen. Because some of the posts that we had to deal with, and this, I know some people are saying you're the wrong top person to have called for this, and even this topic I'm about to start, I also think you're the wrong person. But I want to unpack some of the tweets that women have had to face this Women's Weekend. That some of the tweets that came up. So Kenny Kunene, who works with Gayton, also had some tweets, like things like a drunk woman's pussy is owned by who got her drunk, or the lucky one who finds her drunk. Happy Freedom Day tomorrow, free pussy, free dick, free blowjob, free. So Kenny and Gayton, these are the leaders that we've chosen.
Yeah, but they were very young then. They were 30 something. They were very young boys.
Very young at 30 something.
They were very young boys having done sentences, having made their bones. You know what I mean? Having come out of jail has changed people. The one was a pastor at that time. You know what I mean? Talking about, you know, the best sex he's ever had was at a church conference or whatever the case may be. You know,
See,
so
all
for
these things
me,
you're saying are just really not really. Is this the type of characters that we really ought to have in leadership? Do things like that matter, or everybody's got the right to be themselves?
so okay, on account of their trolling, right? Just saying whatever. I think that there was a time, especially between 2000 and let's say 2009 to 2014 on Twitter, where you could just say anything. You know what I mean? Everybody was just saying anything. It's ridiculous. But even when you're just saying anything, you need to have certain lines that you won't cross. You know what I mean? There's certain lines that you won't cross. Not to say that you should never offend anyone ever. You should never say something offensive. But he could have said, you know what I mean, something about drunk girls are loose or whatever. You know what I mean? Without making it rapey. Do you understand what I'm saying? So he could have said that. He could have said that when girls are drunk, they are more easy. You know, people always say, "Hey, wine, wine." You know, it hits my legs or hits my knees or whatever.
I'd like to quickly address this comment on screen now. Quickly, I cannot believe this entire conversation has descended into personalities and identities, and no discussion of what is the person in politics. And I think that's important because we came here to discuss, should Gayton be a minister? Does he belong in governance? So for me, I felt as if all these discussions that we're having are kind of painting the picture, but then let's keep on the line, as Karen's husband is saying here, that please, now we want to stay on topic. So should Gayton be a leader?
Is it Karen or Karen? Is his wife a Karen? I don't think he can answer. She might be screaming, munching.
You see, even Ghost. I mean, if Ghost was taken away, then the same needs to apply for everybody, right?
Well, in the case of Ronaldo Ghost, right? He knew that what he was doing was wrong, right? But you know, the way he did it was smart, because you cannot say he racially attacked anyone. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say is that without using the K word, the mere attack on those black podcasters was racially charged, was racist, was hateful. The way he attacked those boys, his reaction to the boys, regardless of what those boys said, the way in which he came for them and then said, as the colored community, I am coming for them in defense of the colored community. That makes it a racial attack. It's clear as day. He doesn't need to say, I'm coming for these K words as a member of the colored community. No, he doesn't need to say that for it to be racist. It's racist, it's racially charged, it's a hate crime. That he has committed a hate crime while in office. As I said, forget the old tweets. Forget the old tweets. You don't need them. You don't need any more evidence than the tweet he tweeted 2 nights ago when he said, "We are not you." That is it. That is it. We are not you. Racism and forwards. Done. Done. That is enough. We are not you. What do you mean by that? It can only be racist. A reasonable person can only infer that that is a racial statement, to say that we are either superior to you or we are inferior to you. But, you know, I'd be, you know, I don't know. I'd be generous to think that he'd refer to himself as inferior.
Wild Blue is saying, what are his skills? What are his competencies for the role? Who would be better? What are the alternatives we can promote for the position? For the position of Minister of Arts and Culture, he has 0 skills. Zero.
Mm.
He is not competent. He's got no skills. He doesn't belong there. Sorry, Nota.
Mm.
That's actually for the guests. It's not for me. So please, can you deal
Mm.
with these questions?
Yeah. So, a minister is supposed to advise on policy. You know, they've got an entire office, they've got staff, and all those things. So any old idiot can be a minister, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It doesn't really take a really bright person or a astute person to be a minister. You've got so many people, you know, you've got your director generals in each department who actually oversee the operational work of that department and whatever the case may be. So you don't really need too much qualifications to actually be a minister. In fact, you don't need any qualifications at all. Now, needing qualifications in a country like South Africa, where people have been historically denied access to education, is problematic as well. We don't want to be represented by an aristocratic class of academic elitists. We don't want to be represented by them and them only, because we've already seen the paternalistic relationship we've had with thought leaders and academia. The current crisis that we have right now, the current inequality that we have in this world, was designed by people that went to Columbia University, to Harvard University, to Yale, to Stanford, you name them. The crises we're living with to this day are created by those people. You understand? So if we think that those institutions are credible, then there's something wrong with us, because if those institutions were really credible, they'd be solving the problems of this world instead of adding to them. So on the part of him needing a certain qualification to be a minister, you know, I don't think that he needs that. He's got life experience, business experience as well, you know, that could assist him in performing his duty. But the real disqualifier for him is his personal identity crisis, especially at the helm of a culture institution. And the fact that he admittedly hasn't done the work to deal with it. You see, had he said, yes, I had an identity crisis and everything else, and then I went to therapy, and then I had cognitive behavioral therapy, I had, you know, racial sensitivity training, I had all of that. Now I've come back reformed. Good. Qualified. You qualify. You had a problem, you addressed it, and now you've come back having learned better, or having unlearned what was wrong about, you know, your previous disposition. He just said he became decaffeinated, which means he found a way to have enough proximity to white people for him to no longer be considered the K word. And that was yeah. And that was his issue. So that identity crisis, that anti-black sentiment that he still has within him, that he hasn't addressed, is for me the biggest disqualifier. The thing is that if we use all these other, like, you know, qualifications and all these other standards, right, then what we'll find is that, you know, we'll have no ministries, no ministers. Nobody will qualify.
No, I disagree with you. As an arts practitioner who is in contact with many people who have been in the arts for many decades, who are just as fit to be ministers of the industries, activists who have actually done work, right? And I think that Gayton has got a very populist approach to problems. And I don't think that he's got enough information and background in the arts to be in that position. For example, when he says, I'm giving coloreds more opportunities, and then he changes around delegations to put in coloreds, it no longer becomes about the quality of the art. And as a minister of arts and culture, your first priority is to honor, actually. You're the custodian of arts and culture. So it doesn't become about colored representation, black, white. It becomes about the quality of the art. So
Yeah.
even when we look at even when we look at the people he chose for the Cuba delegation, where he said, I'm putting in coloreds, it wasn't colored writers who had put in the work. It was people who had worked in PA in his campaign, who had posted a few Facebook posts, and then they think that's a writer, but they're actually colored writers who have been writers and have been marginalized and who deserved those opportunities. So I don't think he's got the wisdom to know how to navigate the cultural space. I just don't think, I think that, like you say, he's a great businessman. Maybe go put him in the Department of
I don't know many
Industries.
great businessmen from South Africa. I don't know
Well,
many
I'm just
great
saying that
businessmen. Yeah,
he's not fit
he's
for
a
the art
successful
space.
businessman.
He
Yeah.
doesn't know what the artist's needs are. He's
No,
been there
you're
for
right.
so long. He hasn't even had the brainwave to call artists and have an artist in Daba and find out what the issues are. What he's done is he's now aligned with himself with the administrators who are the problems for the artists. So he is not even there for the artists. So he's there being busy on a bureaucratic level, and the problems that artists have faced continue to face them, and even worse right now because of his decision making. And even there's all these scandals around the funding and who gets the funds. So I don't think he's good for the Department of Arts and Culture, and that's a very important sector because it deals with archiving our history. It deals with the spirit of the nation. So if it's somebody who lacks spiritual wisdom is leading it, it's not going to function the way it's supposed to function as a department. Anyways, yes. Or let me go up this.
Okay. I just while you're going up, while you're looking for the next comment, we agree on that. I'm just stating that we agree on his disqualifying qualities, and for me, beyond wisdom and everything else, that internal conflict that he has within himself is a disqualifier because at his age, he knows how destructive it has been on him, on his own self-image. And as a parent, he knows how generational that toxicity can be, right? So he needs to fix that with himself, not for whether he's a minister or not, just as a father of children.
As himself. Here's another.
Otherwise, his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren are going to be dealing with the same issues that he has to deal with. You know, so that personal conflict is a symptom of deeper internal issues that he has with himself that he has not done the work on. And I don't think that a specific, even if he has got a degree in culture or whatever, that's my point was that even if he had the academic qualification, personally, he doesn't have what it takes to perform that role with conscientiousness and integrity, which is what he vowed to do when he took the oath.
I want to get into this comment from Rainy Days Holdings. It says, Sipho Tole, just 2 days after his appointment as minister, said he should be removed because, as minister, 2 days after Gayton's appointment as minister, Sipho Tole said Gayton should be removed because he clearly doesn't understand his portfolio. Politically, he's also blank. The problem in South Africa is that when you have money, you can manipulate voters. They follow you because of your wealth, not your leadership. Now his son owns a soccer team that everyone knows actually belongs to him, yet he is the Minister of Sports. I'm glad African ancestors are fighting against his Afrophobia. I'm assuming I'll get to the bottom of that. But yes, we're still unpacking this. I think that
So sorry, I'm in the sun. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, let's just go through the comment section. Okay. Yes, please do share the conversation, guys. It's an important one. Because it does matter what kind of leaders we choose. You know, when you talk about qualifications, Nota, I've been in the arts industry. I've been a beadwork artist, I'm a poet, I'm a musician, and now I'm in podcasting. So I've got vast experience, and my experience comes from when I started in 2000. So I've got this experience, right? I don't know how many years that is from 2000. Okay, well,
25.
25 years. 25 years.
It's a
Then on top of that,
let's say it like that.
I went and worked on my art in academia as well. So I've also got a master's in the arts. So I don't understand when you say that that qualifications don't matter. There are people who are actually working on their craft and working even in school to make sure that we are high level. So why, if I've got all these achievements under my belt, why am I going to have a minister that doesn't know what the hell he's doing?
Because that's the problem. You're in South Africa, and therefore you know that we're an unequal society. It's not just unequal from a monetary perspective. It's also from certain things like education levels and all those things.
And then when we go back to the criminal, okay, sorry.
Yeah, outside of the criminal. So I look at my father, who's got at most, I think, grade 8 or standard 8 or whatever, form 3. That's as far as he qualified. Great man, great leader, great business person. You know, I'd put him as the president of a country. You know what I mean? Just in the way in which he's able to run his own family, run his business affairs. Like, what a great human being. You know, there's other people, his peers, who've got PhDs and everything else. I would not ever put them in positions of leadership. Having the qualification does not make you fit for the job. Unfortunately, we cannot look at it as black and white like that. You know, so it becomes very problematic when we as South Africans use qualifications to grade one another's competence, especially in things where we've got a colonized, you know, academic institution that grades us. You know, we've got certain things like, oh no, black kids have got lower IQs and everything else. You know what I mean? So on the test that white people have rigged to perform better than black people, they perform better because on every other test they perform more poorly. You know what I mean? When we have to run, when we have to jump, when we have to now play games or whatever, when we have to use strategy and very limited resources, you know, we outperform white people. But yes, they are able to say that we've got lower IQs and everything else. And they use a broken scale to measure that, to measure our competence. And for me, the problem is the fact that our academic institutions are not decolonized. Therefore, they cannot be trusted. Not to say it is not an achievement or an accomplishment to complete a qualification or anything of the sort. No, it is an achievement, it's an accomplishment. It's a very serious thing. We take it very seriously because this world is constructed by people that come from those institutions, right? And therefore, they have a hegemony over us. But the reason why we get that education and get these qualifications is to understand the system that oppresses us so that we can oppose it. We don't get those qualifications. We don't get the cum laude, master's degrees, the PhDs and everything else so that we can be the better blacks.
No, but we get them so that we can understand the systems and the theory behind them. That's my point, yes. Is that some of us have got theoretical and practical experience. So why are we those people who are not being selected in these positions? What was the point of bettering yourself?
If it's to better yourself. It's to better yourself. It's not to make you better than other people.
It's not to make you better than others. But the thing is, stop doing it from a point of the thing is that we do have educated black people now, guys. So but we can't be.
Whose education is that?
I'm saying to you, Guti, people have put in the work on the theory side, and we cannot deny that. And yes, not everybody has had equal access, but people have put in the work. And once you understand how a system works and you've had experience over and over, you get better with time. If you just take someone and throw them in every time, then that sector is not going to develop and get better and better and better, because we're still going high. Only the privileged have got it. Guys, we need to work everything together. But wait, before I continue with this point, I want us to go back to, if I become a minister of an industry and suddenly one of my family members, after I've seen how the budgets work and everything, one of my family members suddenly enters that industry, is that not a conflict of interest? Because I'm going back, right?
It's a conflict of interest. Of course, it's a conflict of interest. Now, the same thing works with the academic qualifications. If I get an academic qualification because my parents can afford to take me to university, I will fare better than the child of the parents who could not afford to take them to university. If my parent is a minister, I will then have business opportunities in the portfolio that my parent is a minister in. And those things at the same time disadvantage us, all of us. Why? Because whether it be by a certain qualification, by the fact that you come from a higher class society, or by the fact that you've got proximity to power because of political patronage, you know, all of those things rig the system. And it's an unfair system. And it keeps reproducing higher and higher levels of inequality. And when we stop focusing on addressing the issue of inequality, on the fact that there are more of those that have not than those that have, right? Then we'll create all these other crises, sorry. When you're speaking to educated people, you need to use the right word. You know, these other crises, right? So that you can now feel vindicated for doing something about something, but you're not doing anything about what really matters. You understand what I'm saying? So the problem that we need to be dealing with is this inequality, the racial class divide, all of these things that create this inequality, that create these power structures that, you know, protect themselves, that create these power, privilege, patronage networks that entrench themselves, you know, to fight this establishment that keeps sending more people into poverty than it uplifts out of it, right? If we don't address that system, then everything else that we are addressing is inconsequential, because what we're not doing, right, is that we're not leveling the playing field, especially for those at the bottom of the food chain. We're not raising them up, and we're not inculcating a culture of those that have privilege to be duty bound to assist those that do not have it. It needs to be your duty. If you're a rich kid, if you come from a good home, you went to a private school and everything else, you need to be like, damn it, I was so lucky. The birth lottery gave me a jackpot. Let me go share my winnings with those that didn't emerge as fortunately as me. That gives you purpose. That takes you away from hedonism, nihilism, and all these things. All these rich kids that are on drugs and everything else because they're purposeless and they've got nothing really to do. They can't volunteer. You don't see them volunteering in the United Nations. When you travel all over Africa, how many white people have you encountered? Kids, university kids, when you go to your study groups or whatever the things that you guys do in academia. How many United Nations workers are coming from Sweden, Switzerland, United States and everything? Young kids that are volunteering. How many South Africans do you see doing that? You don't see Saki Matozoma Jr. out there donating to whatever. You named it. Name our rich kids. So if the elite are able to do whatever they want, why is it wrong for Gayton to do what Patrice Motsepe has been doing? Why is it wrong? It's all of a sudden it's now wrong because the colored guy is doing it. You see, that's how that's what they're going to do.
Elite thing, right? You know what? Like, there's this guy that I know who's been in the publishing sector for I think you might know him, Okarago. He started off at Share.
Yes,
he's been there for over 25 years.
He works for the Nana Coyote Foundation.
Yes.
Foundation, yes.
He's been there for many years, but he's also done all these courses to work on the theory side. And he's not somebody that is just a privileged kid. That's why I'm saying that
now
we can't say that people haven't had access to the theory side, because, guys, we live in a world where people speak in different languages. And I don't mean language, the talk. I just mean how we approach things. So abantu abamnyama approach things differently to the way abelungu approach things. And the reason that the Black people who are using the white systems are more successful is because those systems are there and they've been in place and they've been worked on, right? So when do we start working on our systems and on ourselves so that we can also elevate on the same level, so that when when it's in the language Jabelung, it's clear. It's language into it's clear. So that's what I'm saying, that we can't dispel the theoretic side. Our proposal, all these people who are in these admin structures, the work that they do, the reason that they've been able to exploit us so much is because that position holds a lot of power. So we do need to make sure we develop artists with those skills and ensure that they are the ones in leadership, because then they've got both experience on how it actually, the reality, you know, because what we
But
find
we
is
need
that
to be honest.
administrators don't have the reality and experience of artists, and then the artists don't have the skill of the administrators. So we need to find people that are actually in the middle of there.
Well, I think we need to be honest though. Let's be honest. Majority of artists just want it for the fame. Majority of people that go out there and say that they are artists are just people that want fame.
That's not true.
Majority of people just want fame. The way in which you measure that is that ask any artist to sit down for 10 years and be guaranteed an evergreen career, or the option of instant notoriety. Majority of them will choose instant notoriety. If you tell the artist you have to qualify for 7 years as a medical doctor before you can jump on the stage, they won't do it. They'll look for the shortest cut to get there. So it's an attitude that persists within the artistic space and is exploited by those that hire the artists. Why? Because they create systems that mean that an artist can thrive without knowing anything about the business, because they'll have all the people or the handlers there. And those handlers are there to ensure that the artist knows nothing about the business so that they can make as much money as possible out of the artist and rob them. And
that's why we need a leader who has got experience with both.
Yes, so we do need leaders that, but are we looking at the department and the ministry as a complete structure, or are we looking at just the person at the helm of that? You understand? Because if we look at the complete
there
structure,
just needs a complete rehaul of the Department of Arts and Cultures, and it must start with the minister.
I think that the minister is the least of our worries. I think our biggest problem is the president himself. A president that can employ people in such critical ministries without doing due diligence. I mean, don't they have security checks, security clearances, and all those types of things? Let's say he was at the European Union presenting African culture and everything else, and then his tweets were now brought up by journalists in Europe. Imagine that embarrassment. Let's say Gayton was in the Oval Office, and then Trump said, "Let's look at your tweets." Do you understand what I'm saying? How humiliating that potentially could be for the entire nation. So why would you put someone who's got such a compromising history at the helm of such an important thing? Because Gayton travels the world. We're just lucky that his term hasn't coincided with a proper World Cup, because he'd be there as our representative. You understand what I'm saying? The problem is the person that appoints all these people. Cyril is the only problem. And every time we attack ministers and everything else, Parliament doesn't even have, you know, a precedent of having a minister removed. There is no statute about that. You know, you can't ask or lobby one of the parties and say, yo, EFF, you guys feel strongly about this. We would like to lobby for you to put a motion of no confidence. They can't do it. The only motion of no confidence can be served on the president. And therefore, it's the president's head we should be calling for. Because this is not the only misappointment he's made. Every single ministry has been given to someone who is compromised in some way, shape, or form. You understand what I'm saying? Every single one of those ministries. There is not one. Even this Dean McPherson guy, right? That went with whatever, but Daily Maverick journalist to set up that Deboho Malaka. Yes, what she did was wrong or is wrong. There's corruption there, but there's corruption and malfeasance everywhere. And the thing is this, is that we only root it out where it's most convenient. We go for the lowest hanging fruit. So we're going to now make a gigantic corruption scandal about her siphoning money out of the IDT or whatever into an NPO, which he then used for a house and water for. Why is that the big thing when the actual thing that brought this whole entire controversy about is the 836 million rand that was spent on a tender that was supposed to be for 200 million rand? Why is the controversy now her conduct and the smaller nyana skeletons that she has, when the big skeletons that lead directly to the president, the big kingpin, because he was the one that was asked to intervene by this same CEO who sent WhatsApps to the president. So he was fully aware of what was going on. And yet we're now being told to destroy this black woman who is a cog in a corrupt system. She's a cog in a wheel in a corrupt system. That entire system is corrupt. Anyone that enters that system gets tainted by that system. You know what I mean? We've had these discussions. This is why I would not join any political party. I would not join any government or whatever. I can work for them. I can do work. I can, yes. But for me to join and be a part of that, I cannot, because that entire system is corrupt. And it's about patronage networks. And patronage networks protect themselves by compromising any part of the network. Any person that qualifies to be part of a patronage network needs to be compromised in some way or form so that they can be controlled, so that they will not be destructive to the rest of the network. So that is it. That is why Cyril surrounds himself with criminals, because he's a criminal himself. He's a kingpin. You understand? There's nothing that we become aware of that he doesn't get an intelligence report of at the first,
Are you not scared he's going to sue you when you call him a criminal?
No. Cyril used Shimza to sue me. He can't do it directly, because that would put me in a position where I'm directly fighting with the president, and that would elevate me up too high. So he'll send a proxy. He'll send Shimza, Shimza, go sue this guy, silence him, make it financially difficult for him to say these things, make it very costly for him to have such free speech, and hopefully he'll starve to death eventually.
Speaking of which, what do you think of the abuse of power and money to silence free speech that we're starting to see surfacing in South Africa?
It's even worse than that. This whole entire thing of the cancellation of the Open Chats podcast, I personally do not believe, right, that those statements that they made were racist. Yes, they might be stereotypical. Yes, they might be hurtful. Yes, they might be all of those things, but they're not made on the basis of this is something that is synonymous with this race. You understand what I'm saying? They weren't like that. Because when I watch Open Chat, that episode, because I don't actually watch them, because their topics are a little too edgy, right? And they're being spoken about by people too young. They're out of my age bracket. And I think people think that is some sort of an insult or something like that. I'm a 35-year-old man. You know what I mean? I cannot be privy to discussions about the sexuality of girls younger than 25 years old. It's wrong. It's inappropriate. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just like inappropriate. That should never happen. That should never occur.
We seem to have lost your audio, Nota.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, that was
And
my mother. My mother silenced me. My mother silenced me with a call. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So yes. Oh, do you need to? Are you there? I'm going to bring up another guest, guys, on stage, because I'm so glad. And if anybody else wants to join in this conversation, please hit me up. I do know that I've got quite a large network. Send me a WhatsApp, whatever. I can send you the live stream link. And I'm just about to add on Abut Eugene from the Economic Freedom Fighters, who have called for the removal of the Minister of Arts and Culture. I hope that his network is going to come right for us. I see he's still muted, but he will definitely.
Can you still hear me?
Now we can hear you, Nota. We have lost you again.
Yeah, because I needed to send my mother a text to tell her I'll call her back. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. And please do keep your video on. Would Eugene, when you're ready to join us, please do turn on your video and your mic. As we are unpacking this morning, what caliber of a person do we put up as the head of the cultural institutions, of the artists, the custodians of our culture, the custodians and the people who archive our history. The arts and culture department sector is not just about, it's not for vibes, guys. Arts and culture is history. It's about the well-being of the spirit of the nation. So it impacts everything, as you know how musicians affect you, how you can have a really bad day and then you put on a specific song and then your whole spirit is shifted. So these people, as much as we don't recognize or we take for granted what they bring into the space, it's very important for the wildness of the space. So as I promised you, we've got Eugene Tetra from the leaders of the economic freedom fighters, who are calling for the removal of the minister. And let's try to understand why, because today we are unpacking, Guti, what kind of a minister do we have? Is Gayton fit to be a minister? Good afternoon, good morning, Mr. Mtetwa. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ms. Mazwai, and good morning to your viewers. I see even Mr. Lota is here. Well, we have never been okay or happy with the appointment of Mr. Gayton McKenzie. First and foremost, based on the principle, we employ somebody in government. We know that everyone has to go through the streaming process. And one of the things that they often look at everywhere, even in big companies, is that do you have a record, criminal record? And we know openly that Gayton McKenzie has got that criminal record. So it is only in South Africa where you would find somebody with a criminal record given a position in government, to be a minister, to be an employed under government, to lead people, to deal with huge budgets. But secondly, it is the unfortunate situation with the sector that this sector is often given somebody, anyone. It's like a demotion or a garbage bin where anyone, any Tom, Dick, and Jablan, as he often say, can be just dumped in this particular sector because nobody takes it serious. And I will further say, even the president, if you have noticed, this current president has never said anything about the arts and culture sector in his State of the Nation address. Both of them. He has never said anything. You go further to the Minister of Finance. In his budget, he says nothing about this sector. So that's the level of disregard of this sector in government. And we're not surprised why Gayton McKenzie would have been or has been made a Minister of Arts and Culture. You will imagine it wouldn't have happened that Gayton McKenzie be made a Minister of Police or Minister of Finance. It would never happen. So this is one sector that has always, from 1994, the first minister in this sector was Dr. Ben Gubane, who was drawn from an oppositional party, Inkatha Freedom Party, by the ANC, which had a um, had a majority rule, but it was able to give this sector to a minister from another political party, which would not have with the minister of finance, with the minister of defense force. Those departments will never be given to any other political party or a minister from other political party. Even in the GNU, it will never happen that those positions, those portfolios, departments, or sectors that is forever downlooked, and treated as a department where if you want to demote a minister, Mr. Natim Tetwa from Minister of Police, throw him into the demote anybody, send them. If anyone has got issues, we've got issues with him, pointing at him for corruption or what. Now they must be thrown into the Department of Arts and Crafts. So we are saying we who is suitable for this sector. He acts very spontaneously. He likes platform, he likes media platform, he likes social media. He announces he's operating from the social, his office is the social media. X is his office, where he announces randomly things that don't make sense, make promises to people and not keep to the promises. So indeed, as the EFF, we've never approved of his appointment. This sector, even in our manifesto, 2024 manifesto, we state the fact that this sector requires somebody with apparent experience from this sector, not somebody who's just thrown because they are given these blue lights in order to sell their votes into the GNU. It requires somebody we have people who are very much informed in this sector. We have doctors, who are artists, who are actors, who are capable, who could be equally, tried and tested. We've never had. Miriam Makeba was one of the greatest artists, iconic artists who have ever lived in this country, who was able to go and stand before the United Nations in less than 10 minutes, make United Nations believe that South Africa needs attention in terms of the apartheid. Even O.R. Tambo admitted that what Miriam Makeba could do, they could not do for years. Yet Miriam Makeba post 1994 was still alive but was not given the opportunity to become the Minister of Arts and Culture. Why? Because we are undermined. This country talks one thing and acts differently. We've been told that we must deal away with the westernized mentality of the ability or capability comes from academic qualifications. But all the academic qualified people in government have failed, yet we are not considered as such people who are capable. I always said, and I still say boldly, I would do better in that portfolio than all the ministers that have been put in that portfolio. And I still believe I could do far better than them because I've got the apparent experience. But we are overlooked.
Your network, yes, shaya, but we saw this weekend that the EFF has called for the removal. Can you speak on that a little bit? Are you able to hear me, Abu Eugene?
I couldn't hear you properly there.
Oh, I was saying
The
that we
problem
saw
was
that.
the sound there. It's got a problem.
Yes, you've got Ingari, you've got the CIA there. Can you log off and log on again, please? If you log off and log on again, it might make it easier for us again. And make sure that your battery is plugged in the car there. So I think Wild Blue's got such a powerful point that they're making here, saying that cultural producers and performers have a major role to play in repoliticizing and radicalizing of people. That's why they don't want that portfolio to function well, hence unqualified ministers. That's a very good point. If we remember the Chinese Revolution with Chairman Mao, the reason the Chinese are controlling economies right now and globally taking over is because there was a time in history where they just focused on arts and culture and they blocked everybody out. They even didn't have Christmas in China. They blocked all cultures out and just focused on their cultures. And as a result, this Chinese superpower we're seeing emerge is a result of that. So what Wild Blue is saying that is if we zoned out, took out American culture, blocked out the Western influence and focused on just our identity and arts and cultures and what makes us and empowers us, it might actually take us a little bit further. Nota, why you keep taking off your video? So I'm never sure if you're ready to speak, but we are going to start wrapping up, guys. Now, I've just stolen these men's time, but I did find this was important. Okay, let me... Okay, fantastic. So do you have any...
Sorry. I was
any
listening
thoughts?
outside. Ngiphazamishe yilabo mama. Naba. Yilabo mama bangiphazamisa. And
okay, Nota, come back. Let's
can you hear me? They want to know
yes.
what my opinion is on just what was discussed. Is Eugene gonna come back and join us, or we're gonna wrap up now?
I think he's gonna come back and then we wrap up, but we are wrapping up. Don't worry.
2 seconds. It's me, for just 10 seconds.
Yes, guys. So the importance of culture and identity, it goes together, and that's where you get your self-confidence.
Even if you're on a Zoom call, you need to, show them the appropriate respect. And the other person that understands the culture that you come from on the other end of the line, like Assistant Sigi, understands that, okay, no, let him, do the respectful thing, say bye to Omama, and, we can continue the conversation. But it just shows you how far reaching this conversation has been. These ladies, Labo Mama, they pulled me out, they said, yeah, bon, manja bafana bangan, sibalingisa nina, basenkingeni manje. You know what I mean? Which means that, these young boys, they see you guys saying all things, all these funny.
Your Nota, your network, you walking around is not really working for us. So I suspect I'm gonna wrap this up now, guys, because now it's not comfortable to watch something that's jumping all over the show. Wild Blue, last comment, Western values have infiltrated African culture. Look at African Americans right now. All liberal, capitalist, imperialist outcomes.
Okay.
China's experience is worth studying. Yes, as we close off, Nota.
Yes, sorry, I'm back. So, as I was saying, we cannot look at any of these things in isolation.
Yeah, no, you need to be in one location, guys. Please respect our audience guests. We're going back to Eugene Tetwa. Brother Eugene, are we better now? Let me, do you want to unmute? Can you unmute your mic? Yes. Oh, because yeah, there's still a bit of a crackle. Let's hear. Yeah, it's crackling, and this is an important conversation.
Yeah, even your side when you are talking to me, it's cracking. It's cracking. Let me see. But the issue here is because of our power. There's no power in my area for 4 days now. So that might be the cause.
Ah, the network, yes. See, that even speaks to the type of leaders we have. We don't have electricity. We don't, like, so many things are going wrong.
Yeah, we haven't had electricity for 4 days. So maybe that's why the network is not okay.
Juan.
So I don't know if it is
Sorry,
better
sir.
now. Yeah.
No, the sound is not working, guys.
Yeah, it's not well. Mine is working, but I've got 5% battery power left. So I'm gonna
Yes,
need to
we're
find a
gonna have
place
to
to
keep
charge.
this conversation up. I'll speak to both of you to see when you guys can both make time again, because this is a conversation that kind of do have to have, because arts and culture conversations are about identity. And as you say, identity is a big, big issue, and it's an important conversation because it's everything.
Very
So,
important. You know, there's all of this happening. There's investigations happening at SAMRO. I know SAMRO falls under the Department of Trade Industry and Competition, but we need a weighing in of our arts and culture minister on the shenanigans that are going on there. You know, you can't lose 90 million, 30 million, or whatever. We can't be saying numbers like 30 million, 90 million as if they're just normal numbers.
yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, like, none of us have 30 million rand houses, us that are not in cabinets, that are not ministers, right? So those are big numbers to the rest of us. Um, so, you know, they can't just be thrown around and there's no consequences, there's no outrage. And now we're dealing with the identity crisis of a minister who should have dealt with this in his 20s. He should have dealt with this before he turned to a life of crime, but now is dealing with this, you know, right in the executive office. And it just shows how our society has got lots of work to do, not only from, you know, the young people, but from everybody in society. Even our leaders in society are not fit for the job. You know, they're not appropriate for the type of country that we are, and we need a complete and total leadership overhaul. And that starts with us as active citizens getting engaged in public matters, getting engaged in public discourse, and stopping this thing of saying, hey, when I listen to when I outgaze when I what, all this other nonsense that is used to bring people down, you know, when we're actually having discussions. Because it's so funny that they always attack those of us that want the best for them. You know what I mean? Just because, you know, we decide to kulisama afro and all this types of stuff, you know, now we need to be insulted for being dirty because we don't look white, you know. And the people that call us dirty, they don't see that that's an admission of how they see themselves. You know, they see themselves as dirty, and that's why they need to now approximate themselves with whiteness to become clean. And we cannot have people that think being black is dirty at the helm of anything. You know what I mean? We've got a president that thinks white is right. White is might. Might is right. That's what our president believes. And therefore, he appoints people that believe the same thing. And our leadership also believe the same thing. And the whole entire system needs to be uprooted.
See, even this what Plugged Africa is saying is that how we need to pay tax to these pigs. I mean, I don't agree to the language, but it's so unfortunate because South Africans, the people, we are willing to pay taxes. You know, we like to pay taxes because we're like, I want to contribute to the nation. I want to do my bit. But the people that control where the distribution of taxes are chowing our money. So, I mean, now, what's the point? You know, you try to be a good citizen, but the people that we have, the non-leaders we have elected into government, and also the conversation that we need to have, I'm just checking if the guests are going to come back, all right, about who chooses our leaders, guys. Because there's that conversation as well. Abu Eugene, that sounds much better. I can hear you now.
You can hear me.
Oh, damn. It's still crackling. The sound. Barry, because we're discussing the music industry, the CIA is bugging us now.
Definitely. Yeah, the call for by EFF for the removal of the minister is based on this racial class that Gayton is found to have said. We've always known that Gayton is for the white people. Gayton, what you can see, this has been actually displayed by his approach, the Mabaham nonsense, nonsensical statement of his that is very selective. He says Mabaham. When he says Mabaham, we know that he refers to uh, black people who are foreigners. And he says South Africans taking advantage of the ignorance of South Africans. He says to South Africans, government must put South Africans first. Okay. Now,
Abu Eugene, the sound is terrible. I think we're going to have to reschedule this conversation. The sound, we can't hear you. I'm going to speak to you on WhatsApp, and then you can tell me what time suits you again, and then we set up this conversation. Is that fine?
That's perfect.
Okay, fine, because even there's a delay. Thank you so much. I know you just came in last minute, nje kanjalo nje. Enkosi. Guys, we did try. I'm going to get Abu Eugene and Nota back for this conversation, and anybody else who needs to be on this conversation, because obviously the more voices and the more minds there are around an issue, the more solutions we can come about. But definitely what has come from today's discussion is that the arts and culture department is way too important for us not to have a proper leader. And it's not a problem that we've got shallow people in government. Tina, as artists, as Umpagat, we know that the importance of that department. Again, if you go to study China, you'll understand the importance of that department. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the MOYA podcast on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe, and join the family. We always have these conversations that are going to empower us and just make us a better community and preserve our histories and preserve our dignity. Mostly, we have these conversations so that we can be the kind of society that stands upright and can be proud of itself. Siswenge. So it's embarrassing for us to have this caliber of leaders. It's time for us to clean up and make this country the kind of country that we all are proud of and want to live in. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you again next time. And please watch the Shadow Twala episode. Yesterday we had Mama Shadow Twala on Moya. So please go catch up on that episode. Tsamagwini.